Soak it in. Do you smell that? That's the smell of Pop being out in the world again, conquering back my world after COVID tried snatching it away from me. But I'm back. I'm back out in the world. I'm actually here in Aix-en-Provence in the south of France, in Europe, shooting a whole host of new dark travel videos for you all, which I'm very excited for you guys to see very soon. They're a mix of supernatural content, investigative content, true crime content. Some stuff gets political. There'll be 8 episodes shot across Romania and France, and I'm very excited for you to see them. However, I'm still in Europe and I'm still filming those videos, but I obviously still wanted to continue getting some content out there for you all. So that's what this video here today is. It is a true crime breakdown from one of our Twitch live streams from many months ago, actually from before I even had my teleprompter, but hopefully it still gives you a little bit of a true crime fix for the day as we dive into the case, or rather the spree of a still unidentified serial killer from Costa Rica. I do also want to give a quick disclaimer that this video is not the best edited. It was shot before I had my teleprompter, and obviously I've been very busy here, so I haven't had the time to really polish up this video, but hopefully the information in it will still be of interest to you. So we'll dive on in now. Thank you as always for watching, and thank you for all your continued support. I'm very excited for you to see the videos coming your way that I shot here in beautiful Europe. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are covering the crimes of El Psicópata, the unidentified serial killer who has claimed many lives in Costa Rica, as suggested to us by Mariela C on our Discord server. For today's case, we are going to go back to 1986, specifically Sunday, April 6th. We go to San Jose, Costa Rica. It's the start of another Holy Week in the town, this town being our largely Catholic town. That morning, we're introduced to Rosario Zamora, 26 years old. And she has 3 daughters, Alejandra, Carla, and Maria Eugenia. Maria being 4, Carla being 11, Alejandra being 13. Rosario prepares her 3 girls for Mass, attending Mass at La Cruz, which is an area of Alajuelita where a lighted cross stands in the mountains. Rosario and her daughters joined her sister, Marta Eugenia, who is 41 years old. So Rosario and her girls joined her older sister, Marta Eugenia, and her 4 daughters, Cristina, Maria Gabriela, Maria Auxiliadora, and Carla Virginia. This group of 9 women begin walking up the mountain towards La Cruz, but Rosario, she turns back when she realized she wasn't wearing proper shoes for the journey. You know, again, this is up a mountain, so, they probably some, hiking shoes might be in order. Rosario's niece, Cristina, the 18-year-old, elects to go back with her. After several hours, people began returning to their homes from La Cruz, but the 7 girls and women in Rosario's family never came back. So remember, Rosario and Cristina, they returned back to fetch those hiking shoes, and by the time everyone else returns from the mountains, the remaining 7 women do not. But what happened to these 7 women? It was later discovered that for some reason, during this trek up the mountain, the group tried to take a shortcut at some point during the walk down the mountain. They are taking this shortcut down the mountain, and that's where supposedly things went awry. So a search begins for the woman that evening. The following afternoon, on April 7th of 1986, an individual who owned property in that area where they supposedly took this shortcut, this individual finds these 7 women. 5 of them were lined up under a banana tree, and the other 2 were found under a chayote plant. Now, how did they die? It was later determined that all of them were killed by gunfire to their heads from an M3 submachine gun. We haven't encountered this in any of our cases so far. If it is a gun, it's usually a pistol or maybe a shotgun, but a submachine gun. Trigger warning for talk of rape. 3 of these women, again, majority of them children actually, were raped. Terrible stuff all around. The investigation continues for the following months, and on July of 1986, 2 men are arrested for the murders. The men are Jose Luis Mongesandi and Arnoldo Mora Portilla. And so these 2 men are arrested for allegedly committing this heinous crime. However, many years later, in 1992, these 2 men are absolved by the court, and their release from prison is ordered because they reviewed that there wasn't enough evidence to keep them in jail. Plus, furthermore, there were more crimes committed by this supposed serial killer that were committed during their time in prison, which made it obvious that clearly if they weren't guilty for those similar crimes, they may not have been guilty for the one that took place on Sunday, April 6th. However, there are limited bits of information pertaining to the case as well as even the investigation into the two men because there was limited information available online. So ultimately, authorities considered these victims to be the first victims of a serial killer they soon named El Psicópata, meaning the psychopath. El Psicópata has since been attributed with even more murders. Supposedly, according to authorities, between 1986 and 1996, the police attribute at least 19 crimes in that period to the psychopath, El Psicópata. The second case occurred 8 months after the Alajuelita massacre, involving victims Roberto Castro, 27, and his girlfriend Francis Salazar, 19. 8 months after this massacre, 2 more victims are found. They were killed in Parque de la Amistad in Curridabat. I apologize for mispronunciations. And soon enough after that, another couple was killed in the same location a while later. Juan Guillermo Najera, 23, and his girlfriend Damaris Rodriguez, 21. A couple is killed 8 months after the initial massacre, followed by another couple killed as well. The 2 men in these cases were found in the same place, while the women were discovered in different areas of a nearby property. All the victims had several gunshots to the head, and trigger warning, one of the women had wounds in her genitals. The next crime occurred in 1988. Victims Victor Julio Hernandez, 18 years old, and his girlfriend Araceli Astua, 15 years old. They're killed while walking back from a party in San Vicente de la Union in Cartago. The next crime occurs in April of 1989. Marta, Miriam Navarro, and Edwin Mata, who were killed in San Diego de Tres Rios. And once again, the woman in this case had wounds in her genitals. So clearly this is a pattern. Interestingly, 6 years later, in March of 1995, so there's a 6-year gap between the murders, but 6 years later, in March of 1995, a woman, Marjorie Padilla, is killed in the same manner, gunshot. However, interestingly, Marjorie is the first victim that we've covered here today that was on their own. It's always been couples or a large group. However, Marjorie Padilla isn't the sole victim of this revival of killings because in 1996, another couple, once again, going back to couples, is killed following the same pattern. This couple being Mauricio Cordero, 25, and Ileana Alvarez. So the 1996 murder of this couple here, once again, Mauricio Cordero and Ileana Alvarez, they are the final crimes committed with the usual characteristics attributed to the serial killer El Psicópata, the psychopath, by the police. However, police have since retroactively attributed the murder of another woman named Ligia Maria in her own room in July of 1987 to the same killer. So in 1987, there is another murder of a woman named Ligia Maria, which retroactively the police have also attributed to the psychopath. So, I mean, it's horrifying. If you look at this, I know it's a mess. It's a mess to look at this, but just seeing all the names here of these people, it's quite jarring to think about. But we continue. In 1998, the police eventually had one main suspect for the killings, a Nicaraguan man who was killed that year. The man was, as one of you in the chat theorized, was a former member of a Nicaraguan guerrilla army and had worked for the Metropolitan Police in San Jose. He had also been a bodyguard for a local businessman. Police considered this Nicaraguan man in question to be the psychopath because of A, a description given by a woman who survived an earlier attack, B, a knife found in the Nicaraguan man's home that was similar to the one used in the genital areas of the victims, which is now horrifying to read out loud because then you realize that those wounds were committed by a blade. And because the man owned 2 taxis, one of which was kept in a garage in close proximity to where the last victims were found. This supposed Nicaraguan man, who they believed was the killer, he was never arrested because he was killed, get this, by another serial killer. It could be Dexter Morgan on a holiday in Costa Rica. But again, it's not confirmed that this Nicaraguan man was ever the psychopath, but if he was, interesting twist indeed. But we'll continue here because the body of the Nicaraguan man was found at the Brolio Carrillo National Park with 2 others, also of Nicaraguan descent. Police determined that the men were all killed at different times and were likely victims of a serial killer known as Matanicas, or Nicaraguan killer. The Nicaraguan killer was eventually caught and sent to prison, and his case is probably for another time. Before we wrap this up though, unfortunately, this whole nightmare, it doesn't end there, because in 2015, there was evidence discovered by police of yet another serial killer in San Jose, Costa Rica in 2015. So now we're very recent now, 7 years ago. So according to authorities, this new serial killer, he targeted drug-addicted sex workers, killing 9 women in 6 months. And I won't go on my usual rant, but we have talked about this many times about how the sex work industry needs more protection. In doing so, we can prevent murders like those where these serial killers target sex workers. But I've gone over that enough. I won't bore you guys with that. But yes, this killer targeted drug-addicted sex workers, killing 9 women in 6 months. So that's over 1 victim a month. Horrifying, horrible stuff. However, what's interesting is, unlike El Psicópata, the psychopath, who killed typically middle-class individuals, this killer, who was known as Mata Indigentes, or killer of the poor, sought out vulnerable targets from the slums of San Jose. Now, some of the bodies of these victims did show signs of sexual assault. One particularly frustrating angle of this new murder spree in 2015 by this new serial killer was the kind of lack of interest from the general population. There was a lack of interest from the general population pertaining to this case, according to Alejandra Mora Mora, president of the National Institute for Women. She said, because the victims were sex workers or drug addicts, they were viewed as, and I quote, dispensable bodies. Mora explained, silence justifies a perception of social cleansing, or in this case, of gender cleansing if people remain focused on the double standard that condemns prostitution, saying these are bad women and that their physical disappearances could clean up a society. A suspect whose DNA was linked to at least 3 of those bodies was arrested and sent to prison the following year. It's all very sad all around. As always, I thank you all, whether you're here or whether you're on YouTube watching this right now. Thank you for being here with me as we dive into yet another not so fun case, but hopefully we come out of this with a little bit more knowledge and maybe a little bit more of a drive to institute change in our own way. And as always, subscribe if you haven't, if you're watching this on YouTube, because we got more fun coming your way soon enough.